Well, good evening. Sorry for that interruption in the video there. We are trying some new things, so bear with us. But welcome to the Town Hall Get to Know broadcast. We are so pleased that you're with us this evening. This is going to be a great show. I have a special guest, Saf Buxy, and we're going to be talking about overcoming obstacles. We're going to be talking about breaking through the barriers of addictions and being able to find a life that we can be proud of and enjoy. We're going to give you some information about how to be able to achieve that. So, if you happen to know somebody that could benefit from this and you happen to be watching on Facebook, a couple of things, share the video out for us. We appreciate that. As well as feel free to comment and you can ask questions if you would like of SAF. We'd appreciate that. We'll address as many questions as we possibly can. I just wanted to let you know that, in a world of infinite possibility, there's a lot of opportunity. And all it starts with is a thought and a desire, and we can achieve anything in this universe. So, if you happen to be watching on Facebook, like I said, feel free to put in a comment, your thoughts, as well as any questions. You can watch this show on Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple, and Android TV. Download the E360 TV application and you can watch it on your smart TV. But we're also streaming to e360tv.com. You can watch us there. You can also watch the replays there under positive vibrations. You can go to our website, lwnfoundation.org, and watch it there too, as well on the replay. So, acceptance is the answer to all of my problems today. That's one of the things that I had to learn is I had to get into a mode of accepting everything for exactly the way that it was. And we have a special guest that's going to be talking about acceptance and facing our past, working towards a spectacular future. He is such a dynamic person. He's a proponent of breaking free from the madness. SAF has successfully liberated numberless actually, of individuals from the tribulation so that they can continue to lead, a fruitful life by inspiring people and inspiring a fruitful, enjoyable lifestyle. By being a beacon of change and taking action to make a difference, he uses his voice to influence positive change. He has a radio show. He also has a talk show. We'll be talking about that as well. And through gaining personal experience and knowledge, Saf incorporates this experience that he had, along with research and training and vocation, and guiding those afflicted by trauma and addiction. The complexity of the human behavior requires a non prescriptive approach. Saf, well, he transforms people's lives through mentally disbanding the cause of their pain. As a proponent of breaking free from the madness, Saf has successfully helped many, many people, and he's going to help us here tonight. And without further ado, let's bring him into the studio.
Hey, how you doing, Stephen? How you doing? Namaste, namaskar. Hey,
Namaste
beautiful.
and
Thank you.
namaskar, correct.
I'm so happy that I'm here. I'm so happy that you know what I'm in the UK, Stephen, right? And
Yes.
it's midnight. Okay, it's 10 past 12. It's Saturday morning in the UK here, and when I
Isn't it
see the one,
amazing how it's Saturday morning? And I really want, let's just start with thank you so very much for staying up late to come on to this show. It's so awesome. We appreciate that. We are honored to have you tonight. But I wanted to say, it's what, just a few minutes after 7 now here in Florida. And yet it's after midnight the next day there, and yet we're in the same moment right here, right now.
That's it. That's beautiful. And what I do love about this whole thing, I've seen the work that you do, and I think that's where I saw a commonality between us. We share the same love, Stephen. Um, the love for uh, fighting against injustice, whatever it may be, but the love for spirituality, the love for recovery, and many things and that is why I wanted to be on this show, be on your show. I really did.
Wow.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Like I said, and I meant it, that we are honored to have you here. I'm so proud of the things that you're doing. Maybe you can help the viewers to get to know you a little bit better, and tell us about your experience and what maybe brought you to the point where you decided, hey, I want to change my life.
Well, I mean, anecdotal experiences, of course, respective, right? But I'm a firm believer that a lesson lived is a lesson learned, and my life was chaotic. But because of that chaos and because of that mayhem, I've ascertained a certain comprehension, not just of addiction, Stephen, but addiction, trauma, mental health, abuse, and as you know, that can't be taught, and that can definitely not be read. Okay, and I think that's what gives me some kind of authority to share my experience, in the hopes of helping others. I'm a recovered addict. I was an addict for 33 years. I was, I'm a victim of abuse and trauma. Um, Social behavioral coach I am now. Addiction specialist, psychologist. I'm an author, professional speaker. But above all, none of that would matter. I'm a survivor. Yeah, I'm a survivor of where that life took me. A survivor of abuse, which was tough to take. And I don't mind talking about it. I mean, I've got a book coming out very shortly called Out of the Madness, and it's the words that I always use, out of the madness, because that 33 years was just pure madness for me. Um, yeah, so you know what? My mission is to give those who are suffering a message of hope, to help these individuals transform their lives in a peaceful in a powerful way, in a way that's congruent to their highest values. I mean, I offer individuals an authentic, mainly gifted individuals, because I think we've all got gifts. We've all got something there. An authentic path to personal development and, of course, serenity. You know, it's all about serenity and peace, and that's what I have today. I guide my clients to experience an abundant life filled with self-love, filled with integrity, and of course in alignment with your highest values. Like you'll hear me say highest values quite a lot, because I was trained by the legendary Dr. John D. Martini. Is number one human behavioral consultant in the world, and we speak a lot about values and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, my whole life is about inspiring people's self-worth, and empowering them and helping them to realize their dreams.
That's just commendable. It's really awesome. And so I think, like, and we do connect on a spiritual level, and a mission level as well, and serving the community and helping people to, regain their life is really important. And you say out of the madness, and I have to. It made me think. Gosh, when I was in the midst of my alcohol and drug addictions, pretty mad. I mean, and I was suffering from all kinds of stuff, certainly anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts. I mean, my life was a wreck at the end for sure. And so I'm so proud that you're sharing that message, that there is light in a dark tunnel, isn't there?
Most definitely. But at the time, when I look at everything, I mean, people, a lot of people use the word coping mechanism, you
Hmm.
know, the reason why they get entrapped or ensnared in addiction in the
Hmm.
first place. I, who work with TJ Woodward, who's a great, great guy, and he's been in the addictions field for over 20, 30 years. We shy away from using the word coping mechanism, and we call it a brilliant strategy. Hear me out on this, because a brilliant strategy does not mean it's the right thing to do, but it's the thing that we did, or the thing that I did to cope, or to help me through that moment in time. Stephen, I was adopted at birth. I was 2.5 months premature, and I was adopted As soon as I was delivered, I was put in an incubator, and then I was adopted more or less as soon as I came out of the incubator. Never held in my mother's hands, and obviously at the time you don't realise, and it's only later on reflection and doing all the studies that I've done, I've come to realise that may have just played a massive part in the way my life turned out. But from those two abandonments, the womb and then the incubator, I was adopted by a family who obviously didn't have any paternal or maternal bond, but learned to love me. And look, before I carry on, beautiful couple, my adopted parents, and I'm blessed. I was blessed to have these two wonderful people who took me on. But then at the age of 11, my whole life changed. I was sent to boarding school, and for 6 years of my life in boarding school, every day of my life for 6 years, I was abused, physically, racially, mentally, and sexually at times. Now, Stephen, nobody should go through that at any age, but at a tender age of 11 years old and first time being away from home and in a predominantly English, British boarding school surroundings, it was tough. And I don't know how I got through it, Steve. All I do know,
Yeah.
I used a brilliant strategy, which was alcohol. And that's
Mm-hmm.
how it started. That's how it started. I mean, daily abuse. I mean, I'm not even saying that lightly. Every day for 6 years.
Mm. It's just terrible situation. And it's like, I just, when I hear stories like that, I thought that I had some bad moments, but compared to some other stories, not even close. But clearly, even through all that trauma, and that's clear to me now why you talk about the trauma aspect as well. I mean, you didn't get to bond to a parent, so how did did you have a feeling of maybe not belonging, or what am I think the word I'm thinking of is that you maybe weren't worthy because your parents didn't love you or something? Explain to the viewers how that felt to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a difficult one because because I only found out about my adoption when I was 18,
Okay.
which was a shock in itself because from the ages of 11 to 17, I was abused on a daily basis in boarding school. I come out of boarding school, I come home to my family, and then a year later, I find out I was adopted. Addiction went to a different level. But growing up, I always knew there was something different about my family dynamic, where my cousins looked like their parents. There was, they had siblings. I didn't. I didn't look anything like my parents, but they loved me. They did love me. But psychologically, growing up as a baby, um, and when I reflect back, I look at the photographs. I see things, and then I ask myself the question: do I see things differently because I do now know that I'm adopted? Would I have seen it in that way if I never knew I was adopted, or if I wasn't adopted? I can't answer that. All I can answer is that I was very close to my mother, and
Hmm.
once my mother passed away, I became very close to my father, and I loved them like my own parents. I didn't know any different. When I found out when I was 18, it was probably one of the biggest shocks of my life. In fact, it was like my whole 18 years was a lie. Um, and my alcohol addiction went to a different level. Um, Cannabis came into my life, and then obviously eventually cocaine, and then crystal meth, and then
Mm.
it was it was uh,
Yeah.
it was chaos. But
Yes, I can imagine. Um, and so we tend to uh, turn, or we did. Let me just, yeah, say that we did turn to things like drugs and alcohol to make us feel better and to maybe not feel that pain and to try and numb ourselves out. And I like the way that you say coping mechanism, but versus a not coping mechanism, but a brilliant strategy, or at least we thought it was a brilliant strategy at the time, right?
well, definitely. I mean, but I mean, for me at that time, and for many people, it is a strategy that we use.
Yes.
Um, because, you know, going through what I went through those ages, for me, drinking that bottle of vodka, which was my first drink I ever had, and I had my first of 2 stomach pumps when I drank at the age of 11. And the following weekend, I did the same thing again. As you know, it doesn't matter what happens the week before, we end up doing the same thing again. But it's drinking alcohol, and it started off on a weekly basis. It basically got me ready for the week that I was going to inevitably endure, and it soothed me for the week that I just endured. And that was my life for 6 years, Stephen.
Mm.
And in the 80s, because this was in the 80s, I don't know if you have it in the US, I'm sure you do, but especially in the 80s in the UK, we had this massive code of silence. You don't say nothing. You don't say nothing to your family. You don't say anything, otherwise you get it worse. So we took the beatings. I took the beatings. I took the racial abuse. I took the sexual abuse, the humiliation, which is probably the biggest part of it. And when you said earlier about trauma, that I try and stay away from the big T trauma, little T trauma. Trauma's trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Trauma is trauma. What's personal to you is your personal to you. What someone else might think your trauma is and their trauma is, it doesn't matter. Trauma is trauma. Um, I I know I've gone part. People think that trauma is something really serious, like sexual abuse or seeing a loved one being murdered. Trauma can be absolutely anything. I mean, my first early memory of trauma, okay, is I remember that all my cousins could butter their bread, their toast, and I couldn't do that. And from that moment, I was led to believe that I was stupid because I couldn't butter my toast. I couldn't tie my shoelaces like other kids could. And I was led to believe that I'm stupid that I can't do that. Well, I took that to my adult life. For me, that was my first trauma. For other people, that's a small thing, right? But for me, as a young kid, 5, 6 year old, that you can't butter your toast, but everyone else can. Are you
Yeah.
stupid? So I was led to believe this core false belief that I
Yes.
was stupid.
It made an imprint in your brain
That's it.
for,
That's
yeah.
it. Exactly
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So trauma is trauma.
Yeah.
I don't look at
Like,
big T, little T trauma. Trauma is trauma, no matter what it is. The fact that it's personal to you, that's all that matters.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, what point or what was your moment of epiphany, or as even some people refer, the hitting your bottom or whatever, your lowest point, but certainly an epiphany or a thought. It's like, you know what? I think I need to change something here. When was that, and how did that come about?
Yeah. You know what, Stephen? People say that sometimes you got to hit rock bottom to value your existence. That's not my story, because if that had been my story, I probably would have come into recovery 30 years ago. I hit so many rock bottoms, and yet I still continued doing what I was doing because that's all I knew how to deal with good times, bad times, indifferent times. That wasn't my story at all. You know what? For 33 years, I caused chaos. I caused mayhem. I stole off my family. I got so many different police jails I was in. I was in debt. I was leading the gangster, or I call it the IGS, the imaginary gangster syndrome. I thought I was John Gotti of London. I was living a very, very fake life, and that was the way I wanted it because for the first time as an adult, I had a bit of power because I never had it when I was a kid. It was like the abused becomes the abuser, even though I never abused the same way I got abused. But it was all this, and the police and I had my stomach pumped twice. I overdosed 3 times. I was flatlined once. I still never learned. So the moment happened. I was on a business trip. I used to be an asset manager, and I was working in hospitality. Probably not the best industry to work in when you're an addict, but I was in Germany, and I got into an altercation, and I got arrested. So I'm in Berlin, and I'm in the police cell in Berlin. And Stephen, no word of a lie, I'm in the police cell looking around, and rather than regretting or feeling upset that I've been arrested, I'm looking around the police cell, thinking to myself, this has got to be the nicest police cell I've ever been in. And I've been in loads globally. And then I remember myself in that cell thinking to myself, I can't believe I just said that or thought this. The day before, I've transferred £10,000, British pound sterling, from my wife's account, blew it all. So she knew something was up. The week before, I was arrested in the UK because of another altercation, this time at home, because the neighbours called. And it's just police, drugs, police, drugs. It was anyway. So I came back. My boss obviously saw me get arrested. He inevitably fired me on the journey back to London. I came back to London, and my daughter, who didn't like me very much at the time, because I destroyed our family. I destroyed our family, and I destroyed everyone around me, absolutely everyone. And I was destroying myself, and I had been for 30 plus years. And we came back to London, and my daughter had phoned a local rehab treatment facility and booked me in to go on the following Monday. I went in on the Monday with them. Even walking up those stairs, Stephen, I had no intention to change my life. I was just going there to fly the flag. I was just going there to keep up appearances, just to keep them sweet. But I remember walking in that room and I saw my first key worker, Paula, never forget her. And I sat down and I just broke down. 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, I was hysterically crying. So my answer to your question is that I didn't come into recovery or try and change my life because I would hit rock bottom. I was just completely done. I was done. I was just done.
We create wreckage with the drug abuse and the alcohol. And yet, I recall not really recognizing it most of the time. One of the statement of can't see the forest for the trees when you're in the depths of an addiction, and not, I guess, maybe somewhat sociopathic because we're not being concerned about the people that we're hurting around us. But what I do recognize too is that on the right path that we can restore relationships. We can overcome the trauma that we've experienced and learn how to still function at a high level. And you're clearly an example of that. Now, you consider yourself recovered, and I like the fact that you say recovered. You've overcome this. It's not that you're still in a process of a continuous recovery. Maybe you can speak to that because there's a lot of people that think that no matter what, it's a lifetime of recovering versus having overcome and recovered from our past.
Yeah, I would like to. Now, when I first came into recovery and I was in rehab, I was introduced to the wonderful 12 steps, the Minnesota model of the 12 steps, and I went to the fellowships of and I am going to mention it. It's called CA, Cocaine Anonymous. And I have no. I know some people say you can't mention it, but it is what
You
it is, right?
mention it. I
Yeah,
don't think that, they've got this thing about it. They don't want the press or whatever, but it's okay to mention it.
I
I
think it's
really
okay. I
do.
mean, as you know, the AA has been around since
It,
1934, so people do
yeah,
know about it.
I think the main thing, and I've seen signs on buses in America here, for that in AA. So it's like, so where is this line? Well, the line is of the anonymity. Okay, we're not going to tell you who we saw there.
Exactly. Well, look,
So
I
I
mean,
don't have a
I've
problem
just written
saying
a
that.
book, so you know
Fair.
everything about me from the book.
I mean,
So
gosh, I've been to probably well
yeah,
over 1,000
yeah.
meetings. You know.
So I started. You know, I did the 12 steps, and um, at the time, and I still, I do follow a lot of the steps today. At the time, it was the best thing that happened to me. If and I owe everything to the fellowship and the 12 steps. It's I'm not saying that if I knew what I knew today, I wouldn't be where I am or I'd be somewhere else. But what I do know is that my journey was 12 steps and it started off with 12 steps and it was a wonderful and it is a wonderful program. Not for everyone, but it definitely was for me. Definitely was for me. As I came into recovery, I did a lot of reading. I didn't work for my first year. I did a lot of reading. Some of the great. Hey Tanya, how you doing, Tanya? Tanya is my humanitarian partner. We run a charity called Healing for the
Oh,
Nations. Healing for the Nations, and we help people around the world. India, Pakistan, Africa. We've already built a water well. We're doing orphanages, and we try and help people as much as we can.
wow.
So she's from Columbus, Ohio. So she's from your neck of
Okay.
the woods. But she's a wonderful, wonderful woman. I want to give you a shout out to Tanya.
Yeah, thank you,
One love,
Tanya. We appreciate you.
one love. Um, yeah. So the 12 steps was amazing. It was great in my life. I did a lot of reading. Okay, I've read a lot of, as you know, Don Miguel Ruiz. I've read a lot
Oh,
of Dr. Gabor Mate, T.J.
so
Woodward.
just
Uh,
not everybody knows about Don Miguel Ruiz, and we were talking about him prior to this, and I told you about how important that book was to myself as
yeah,
well. Maybe will you tell the viewers about that?
Don Miguel Ruiz wrote an amazing book. Well, I'm sure he's written more, but the book that people know about is called The Four Agreements. And Don Miguel Ruiz, I mean, the way he wrote that book is, if you haven't read it, please read it. I think you'll be inspired. It's written authentically, and it's about looking at things through different rooms, four different rooms from a spiritual. I mean, it's a spiritual room that got me. Do you know what I
Yes,
mean? I mean,
ancient Toltec wisdom.
yeah. Carry on. Sorry.
No, yeah,
So
that was my statement. Yeah, it's
yeah,
Toltec. It is ancient spiritual wisdom,
yes,
and it's agreements to make with ourselves that make us impeccable. One of them is impeccable with your word. And if you would, we don't want to give it all away, but the fact of the matter is, if you adopt these four agreements, it will change your life, and you can actually start enjoying life when and people will respect you as a result of adopting these types of behaviors.
yeah.
Yes.
And that was a book that I read, which was a big part of my early recovery. In addition to into 12 steps. Hi Eugene, how you doing, buddy? Uh, he's Mr. Stoogie. We call him Stoogie in the UK.
Dude, you welcome.
Welcome, Stoogie.
We
Um,
appreciate you.
but in addition to all that, Stephen, I said to myself, you know what? I need to I need to learn more about addiction, and obviously Gabor Mate was a big part. TJ Woodward, who I now work with, and I have my own show with. He's got his own modality, his own creation called Conscious Recovery, which is wonderful. And what we say in Conscious Recovery is that we don't disregard any other modality. We use this in addition to all modalities. And I think that's great, because I think what works. And if you try everything, because if it's going to save your life, try it all. But in addition to that, I also trained under Dr. John D. Martini. Um, D. Martini is the leading human behavioral consultant in the world. Um, and he, he was on The Secret as well.
Hmm.
And he's someone who applies universal laws to every situation. And he's just a wonderful, wonderful mentor, just like TJ is, and just like Dr. Gabor Mate is. And basically, I looked at all these people's works. I studied a master's in addiction psychology, and I put all my academic experience and my personal experience in one pot. And then when I got that, I started working in the addictions field. And my first job, if you want an easy job, don't go for this. My first job was working as a drug and alcohol practitioner in a prison service. Category B, lifers prison, I was working in. Amazing. It was
Hmm.
absolutely amazing. Helping people who have done some very, very serious crimes, serious offenses. We're talking from murder to sex offenders,
Hmm.
to big bank robbers, massive drug trafficking dealers, human traffickers. And I was dealing with these people, and I was working with them because whether we like it or not, depending on what age they came in, they will be released. And if I could play a little part in trying to stop them or deter them from reoffending, then I've done the right thing. And that's what kept me going, especially working with sex offenders, because I found that extremely hard in the beginning. And to be fair, it was a very profound experience when I had my first client who was in for multiple rapes, and it was tough for me, very tough for me. But what kept me going, working with people like this, was because they are going to get released, and if I can try my best to stop them reoffending, for stop them from hurting another poor young girl or poor young boy or whoever, then it's all worth it. But I mean, if you when you read my book, I actually go into it in great depth on how that experience was when I first met my first sex offender. It was powerful, but
I can imagine that it is. As a matter of fact, we did, that is a focus as well for the LWN Live with Nature. We did a 2-hour broadcast on it last year with a panel of doctors and experts because human trafficking is a serious situation worldwide. And what I love about what you're telling us is how you are working with the people that are the offenders because they need help so that they won't go back and do the same thing. You know,
yeah,
this whatever was going on in their life, and we can all make really poor choices sometimes, but we can all turn it around, and that's the beautiful part. Boy, and I'll tell you, I just have to say this. You're very knowledgeable. You've gone to great lengths to study to be able to really help people, and you are a coach, and you do have coaching services as well. Isn't that correct?
I do. Yeah, I mean, after I left the prison service, Stephen, I worked in the community, in the drug and alcohol field, and started working with people in the community. Yeah, here's some of the stuff that I've done. I'm a human behavioral consultant. I'm an addiction specialist, soon to be psychologist. Yeah, I had my own radio show, which I just recently finished because I've got so many things going on. I host a show on Sky TV, on Feel Good Factor TV in the UK. Sky TV is one of the biggest broadcasting mediums in Europe, and it's called Men's Talk, where we talk about men's stuff basically. And addiction's a big part of our talk. And the Road to Redemption is a show where I educate young people about addiction, and about trauma, especially people who are from different cultures, from the South Asian culture, who are basically delusional and in denial, and not just the kids, but the parents, and the religious figures within their cultures don't know about this. So I try and educate them through my experiences and through my knowledge. But whilst I'm doing all these things, working in the community, doing my show, I do a show with TJ Woodward every Tuesday at 6 p.m. UK time. It's called Universal Recovery, and we talk about addiction and recovery. That's all we talk about. And he's a man who knows, and his creation is just wonderful. And I urge people to just have a look at it because it could help. It's different from 12 steps. It's different from support groups, but it's something that you could maybe use in addition, because you look at the trauma. Because what we believe is that behind every or beneath every addictive behavior is an essential self, and it's wholeness and perfectness. Okay, and if we can go back to that wholeness, if we can go back to not feeling, not beating ourselves up, get dissolving the guilt and shame, working through the underlying issues, working through the unresolved trauma. And in my own modality, I look into the universal laws, the law of heuristic escalation. I work a lot with that, the law of duality. Stephen, there's no good without bad. There's no prey without predator. There's no predator without prey. I've
I
had
like
some
it.
neg- I've had some negative things in my life, but I still look at the benefits of that. Okay, because I look at it how it served me today. People, we're sold this fantasy in life to lead a one-sided world. When people are up there, they want to
Mhm.
stay up there. They got a new job. They don't want to look at anything bad. It's important that we look at the drawbacks. If we look at negatives, it's important we look at the benefits and we bring them to an equilibrium. Only then we've got a chance of living in an inspiring life. So I'm all about bringing things to an equilibrium. I'm all about looking at both sides of everything. Too many people are caught up on a one-sided world. And there's a Buddhist quote, and I can't remember what it's something like, you can't avoid the unavoidable, and you can't seek something that's not there. And if you do, that's human suffering right there.
Mm.
It's beautiful the way so basically I've brought in all the modalities, all my experiences, and the human behavioral side of things. I brought it all into one,
Mm-hmm.
and this helps my clients self-govern, and it empowers them. It empowers them. We have to look at both sides. We can't ignore one side and not the other, and that's what I'm about, basically.
Yeah, that's perfect, because you do have to look at the whole picture. One of the things that I was curious about was about forgiveness, and about how you had to forgive the abusers that were in your past, that made your life very difficult for quite some time. How did you deal with forgiveness?
It was and I've got a 12 steps help me
Mm-hmm.
with regards to forgiveness, but also the other modalities and everything helped me, because until I could get to a stage of forgiveness, and I put acceptance down as well at the same in the same bracket, um, I would stay in that rut. I wouldn't move forward, and I actually, I've actually spoken to a couple of perpetrators from my youth. One who was sexually uh, who performed sexual assault on me, one who physically beat me with baseball bats and put a gun to my head at a very young age, and I have forgiven them. I've forgiven someone who sexually assaulted me. I've forgiven someone who beat me.
Did,
Um,
did you say that you actually faced them later in your life?
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That's incredible. So that must there must have been some fear, I would assume, involved in that. How
It,
did
it
that feel,
yeah.
stepping into that fear?
It was. It most definitely was. I mean, I remember one guy in particular. Obviously, growing up, there was a lot of fear, especially the abuse that I was receiving from this one particular guy. And I remember when I met him and spoke to him initially on the phone, it was like I was shaking. I was shaking, Stephen. It was like
Sure.
it was like I was that kid again.
Yeah.
Um, but he apologized to me. He
There you go.
apologized to me,
Wow. See,
and I respected that so much. Even though everything he did to me was not right, it was not right at all. But I've used it how it served me today. I've used it how it's how I've been able to help people from that. Um, but I forgave him, and not that I think that I deserve to be on any pedestal, because I believe that no one should be put on a pedestal and no one should be put in the pit. They should be put in your heart. But the forgiveness part wasn't because I thought I was on a pedestal and I can I'm allowed to forgive someone. It was because I had to forgive. I wanted to forgive, otherwise I could not move forward. I would
okay.
stay in that same situation, Stephen. By staying in that same situation, I would have guilt, I would have shame, and I would not be where I am today. And I would
So
not
that
have
that was
transformed.
part of the healing, wasn't it?
100%,
Yeah.
100%. And when we talk about acceptance and when we talk about forgiveness, we're not saying what happened was right. In fact, it was very, very wrong. What we're saying is that
Sure.
until we can accept it, until we can forgive, we can't move forward. We will stay in that same space, and that will always remain as unresolved trauma. It helps you resolve something. Obviously, there's a lot of work to do on yourself. There's a lot of work you can do. I mean, I'm a strong believer in working as a collective, working in communion, helping people move forward, not ridiculing them for their past mistakes, but helping them, healing together, working together, loving together. That's the only way forward. We can't hold resentment. I couldn't hold resentment, otherwise I'd be staying in that same rut, and that's dangerous for me because I'd go back to that same lifestyle as well.
So that's an important factor now. So you've implemented some routines, healthy routines into your life. Can you share some of the routines and how the things that you do to stay on the path and not end up going back and using again? Can you tell the viewers how you have implemented these routines in your life
Love,
and what they are too? Just to
yeah.
if
I
you'll
mean,
let them know what you're doing to stay sober.
yeah. I think the first thing I've got to say is I come from a place of love, um, which for people who knew me from before and the life that I used to lead, the imaginary gangster syndrome life, the life of fake, the fake life, would find it quite bizarre that I'm saying that the first thing I'm going to talk about is coming from a place of love. Everything I do, everything I want to do, firstly and foremost, it comes from a place of love. In terms of routine, again, I do things that I never did before. You know, I meditate regularly, meditate regularly. I try and be in the moment, because you know what, you can't change the past and you can't predict the future. You can only have a little bit of governance on what you're doing right now with yourself. So I try and stay in the moment all the time. What's happening right now? I don't know what's going to happen in half an hour, and what happened half an hour ago, that's happened. I stay with what's going on now. Right now, is you and I, we're giving a message of hope to as many
Yeah.
people as possible that we can, so they can also see there's a way out. You can
Yeah.
get out of the madness. So I do meditating. I, but you know what? In addition to that, and coming from a place of love, I think probably the biggest thing that I do that helps me is helping others. I can't, I really can't stress that. It's step 12 all day long, being of
Yes.
service. Being of service is what I do on a daily basis, whether it's through amazing platforms and shows and like yours, whether it's through my talks, whether it's through my consultancy, whether it's through my workshops, whether it's through my book, whether it's through my shows, whether it's through my one-to-one clients. It's being of service, and that is the biggest thing that keeps me on the straight and narrow path. If you can't practice what you preach, then you shouldn't be preaching it in the first place. I try and God, I'm I'm not a religious person per se. I'm very spiritual, and I do believe in the higher power. I do believe in God. I do believe in all good things about all religions. I go to churches, I go to mosques, I go to temples, I go to synagogues, I go to gurdwaras, I go anywhere that gives me a place of serenity and a place of solace, because I know that I can spend some time with God.
Mhm.
And again, I'm not religious per se, but I had to surrender, Stephen. There was no way. Let go, let God all day long,
Yeah.
because I had to quit playing God myself. You know that saying, you can't play God. Because if I did, I wouldn't be here today talking to you.
Right. Right. I
So
know on my own will, it sure didn't work out so good.
it did not work out good. It didn't work out. I'm dying to know what your vices were. What were are you allowed to disclose your vices,
Oh,
Stephen?
I don't have any problem at all. I'm totally transparent about it. As a matter of fact, I wrote a book about 3 years ago now, where I came out and I was public about it. But the bottom line is that I dealt with drugs and alcohol, but alcohol was the primary one that I was abusing on a regular basis and a continuous basis for most of my life. I had some, periods a year or two, or maybe a little bit more of sobriety, but I always went back. And I recognize now that that was really as a result of not turning it over completely to the care of God or my higher powers. I understood them when I finally really did surrender. um, Things started to change. But there's a process, and you've been mentioning that there is a process. What I'd like to, and so yeah, alcohol was it 10 years or a little bit over 10 years ago now. I ended up drinking, driving, wrecking my sister's car, ending up in jail, coming out, lost everything, lost the business that I'd started, well, lost control. It's still here by the grace of God. but and now I work for the business that I started, but that's okay. um it's still here, but I went homeless, and then I just turned my life around. I decided that was my rock bottom. That was the, hey, I want to change my life. And so 11, almost 11 years later, we're coming up on here we are. We're just doing that step 12 because I've worked through all the other steps and carrying the message to the person who still suffers. And that's the important factor. And you're right, that is all part of that healing and that routine. And I appreciate you mentioning that. What would you tell the person that's thinking about the fact that they want to change their life? What advice would you give that person?
You know, Stephen, there's nothing you can say to someone who is not willing to make a change, who hasn't acknowledged that they've got a problem. We could do so many things. We could talk about the downfalls of drugs and alcohol. We can talk about the health issues. We can talk about the emotional and the damage that it can do to family members and everything. It doesn't. It we could be. It wouldn't mean anything if the individual is still in denial. We can only try, and
Mhm.
eventually we hope that they would see. But as and when that happens, that's the only time that we know that there's any chance of any kind of sobriety or any kind of success. But I think the biggest thing is once they've recognized that there is an issue, there is a problem, there's so much help out there. There is so much help out there. And as I said before, working in communion, because you can't do it on your own. I mean, if you think you can, you may be okay for a week, you may be okay for a month, you may even be okay for a year, but there will be that moment where you'll take your foot off the gas and that's it. You're back into that madness. You're back in there. So I think it's very important to be around like-minded people, but to work with people who know, work as a collective. And I think the experience that I bring, not just from a personal perspective, which is 33 years, but
Mhm.
also from an academic, everything I thought I knew about addiction, I was wrong. Okay, maybe, just maybe, let's not call it addiction. Maybe just call it bonding. Let's call it bonding, Stephen. Do you know what I mean? Let's call it bonding. What about
Well,
it?
it's our best
What
friend
about
too,
addiction?
really.
Yeah. What about if addiction is about adapting to your environment? What about if addiction is all about connection? Yeah. We
Yeah,
had. I wanted to connect with something when I was going through all that, and I
yeah,
connected with alcohol. I connected with cocaine. I
yeah,
connected with crystal meth,
sure.
which grabbed me like no
Yeah,
other drug has ever grabbed me. I connected with these things because of what I went through as a child.
yeah.
I have no connection. What
Well,
about let's not call it addiction. Let's call it
yeah.
connection. Let's call it bonding.
And I know that connection because a little bit further to that. I mean, the alcohol was what created a massive amount of wreckage as well as the drugs. But it was cocaine, but it was in the crack form of cocaine is what I was doing. And boy, you talk about power. That drug, it is powerful and very highly addictive. But the fact of the matter is that it really, truly, I don't care whether it's crack or it's meth or whatever drug or whatever addiction that we have that is unhealthy to us, it wants us dead and unhappy in the end. That's truly where it wants to take us. Because I know I felt every night like I wished I was dead. And so that was that drug or that alcohol talking to me. I really think it's evil in the end, very evil. I think that that's a great point that you've been bringing up. Um, so I'd like we're running down on time here. We have about 4 minutes approximately, about 3 minutes. Um, can you just share with I want to start by saying this has been very powerful. I would love to have you to be able to come back on the show if you would be willing. That would be so awesome.
Always,
Um,
always.
that would be really great because we want to shine this light. The fact is, you've made a good point And I had to recognize that too. We can't help anybody that doesn't want to help themselves. It all starts with the desire. And I wanted to mention that I know that I went to recovery 3 times. It took 3 times for me. And the first time was not for me, it was for the family. And or if you do it for your kids or your spouse or your friends or your job, or but you're not doing it for you, you're doing it for them, like what you mentioned too. You were there to put the show on and let everybody know, oh yeah, I'll solve this. I didn't solve it then because I wasn't doing it for the right reasons. When you're ready to get a hand up, people like yourself are there, and I want to just say thank you for that. So I'd like you to share with the viewers, what is your strength and what would be your final thoughts?
Well, you know what? I mean, I want to. Can I say a quote? I love my
Absolutely.
I love my quotes, Stephen. And I normally do a quote about either an Albert Einstein quote or a Mahatma Gandhi quote, but I'm not gonna. I'm gonna do a Tupac Shakur quote. If people don't know who Tupac is, he's one of the greatest lyricists, rappers to ever live, and he got killed in the early '90s. And
Hmm.
his quote is basically this, and he says, "You got to make a change. It's time for us as people to start making some changes. Let's change the way we eat. Let's change the way we live. Let's change the way we treat each other. You see, the old way wasn't working, so it's on us to do what we got to do to survive." Um, Man, that is one powerful quote because that relates to addiction, that relates to life. When I came into recovery, when I came into recovery, Stephen, I came in to give up drink and drugs. I didn't expect to change my whole life. I changed my whole life. I remember when I first came, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but I remember when I first came, one guy goes to me, "There's only one thing you got to change." I go, "What's that?" He said, "Everything."
Exactly. People, places, and things.
That's it. So, yeah, the best way to be be of service to others. Sorry, the best way to be service to yourself is to be service to others. That's a Mahatma Gandhi quote. I've got all these quotes coming out, but what I want to say is that there is a way out. You can get out of the madness because I did. Yeah, I did because I had help around me. Um, you can't do this on your own. You do it as a collective, do it in communion. I truly now believe with my clients, as you said in the beginning, I've liberated and helped so many people. And I purely put it down to because I know I've been there. I know what it's like. I know if you're trying to put a fast one on me because I've done it. But not only do I know from a personal perspective, I know it from an academic perspective, I know it from a vocational perspective. I've worked with criminals, I've worked with homeless people, I've worked with rich millionaires. Addiction does not discriminate. If it's going to grab you, it's going to take you. And there's a lot of modalities out there that you can look at and learn from and look at all of them because they all have one thing in common, and that is to try and help the sufferer.
Well said. That's so awesome. We want everybody to know that we do believe in you. We know that you have seeds of greatness within you, and it's just a matter of nurturing those seeds. We can create any life that we want to have, but it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take consistency. It's going to take determination, dedication, but most of all, it's going to start with a desire and the intention, and then the visualization actually of that goal already achieved, whether it isn't or not. And when we get into a regular routine of things like we were talking about, Saf, we appreciate that. The meditation. I know that affirmation is really super important, and helping others, just trying to help somebody, put a smile on their face, a homeless person, give them some food or something like that. Let people know that you care. I want to thank you so very much, Saf. It's been enlightening.
Thank you,
Thank
Stephen.
you.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Yes. Bless you. Yes. I look forward to having you back on, folks. We really appreciate you. We're going to go to our sponsors now. This This broadcast is brought to you by the LWN Live with Nature Foundation, and we're proud to have several sponsors that make this show possible. I wanted to just mention too, we're looking for help. If you would like to volunteer and help us with the social media, we could use some assistance there. This is a nonprofit foundation. Very, very soon, we hope to have this 501c3. And so it will be an opportunity for somebody to volunteer, help others, and hey, it's a great thing to put on your resume down the road too. And as we grow, be on the staff at some point. Thanks. We appreciate you. God bless. We'll see you soon. We'll be back Monday.